Hi, this is Jason Fielder with the Daily Forex Report for December 3rd. Currently looking at the U.S.-Japanese yen pair. This pair did close up during today's session, barely had a low at all. This pair overall is moving sideways with the bias that is sideways. Definitely want to look for some resistance and to see this pair potentially move as high as 89.15, possibly move down to some support around the 86.56 mark. Now let's switch over to the Euro-USD pair. This pair closed up, barely had a low. It did move considerably high, ran into some previous support, some previous resistance that we saw, and then pulled back significantly prior to the close. We are looking for this pair to potentially move as high as 152.12, possibly as low as 149.77. Look for some resistance around 151.15, and look for some support around 5,000. Overall, this pair is moving sideways with the bias that is sideways as well. Now, looking at the pound US dollar pair, this particular pair closed down. It did run up for a good while, but pulled back and closed lower. Overall, moving sideways. It did break the trend line, did move a little bit higher, but ran into some previous resistance that we had prior to that point. Look for this pair to potentially move as high as 168.12, possibly as low as 164.36. Look for some resistance around 167.00, and look for some support around the 164.60 mark. Okay, now let's take a look at the US Swiss. This particular pair moved much lower, did run into previous support, pulled back significantly prior to the close. It is moving sideways with a bias that is sideways. Look for it to potentially move as high as 1.0071, possibly as low as 0.9905. Look for some resistance at 1.0051, and look for some support around 0.9959. Now, as far as news announcements goes, we do have two news announcements, significant news announcements for tomorrow. We have the Canadian dollar releasing their net change for unemployment for November at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Consensus on that is that things have dramatically improved from a negative 43.2K to a positive 15.0K. This could be really good news for the Canadian dollar. Now, the U.S. has their non-farm payroll being released at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time for November. Consensus on that is that things have improved from a negative 190K to a negative 120K. Overall, if the numbers are better than that for the U.S. dollar, we could see the U.S. dollar rally a little bit. The non-farm payroll is probably the second to the FOMC announcement as far as ability to move the market. So you definitely want to take note of this. It is being released again at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, as far as what I'm looking at, have a similar setup to the one we had yesterday in the pound that gave us 30 pips pretty quick. But this one happens to be in the Euro USD. Go ahead and drop down to the 4-hour time frame. If you notice here, and we'll zip through this real quick, but if you notice we have a point of support here and here. We have found it again in this 4-hour point. And remember that support and resistance typically is a range, not a price. So while these three lows are not exactly the same, it is within a range. Now, what's interesting about that is we have a point here, we have a point here of support. This particular pair closed right there and, of course, opened right here. We do have basically a area of support that runs along here. So what we're looking to do, looking for a short that would come on down to this area. I do believe that we will see that during this next session. And if you take a look at, and I'll put this on a line. Basically looking for a break below the 50.31 mark down right to the 1.5000 mark. I do believe that it will get this. It's about a 33 pip move, 30 pip move in all. It will probably bounce off of the 1.5000 mark if it moves that low. If you notice here, the price just moved right through it, which is always a good sign. And of course here we have some previous resistance in the market at that location as well. So all these factors, we have this area as well moving right through it without stopping. That's what I would call a window of opportunity. Same thing happened here. We opened at this point and it dropped down to here, but it did move through there all within a 4-hour period. So overall this area I believe is a really good window of opportunity. I believe that we will move through it pretty quick. Use a risk to reward of 1 to 1. So if you're looking to get 30 pips, only risk 30 pips, and we should see this come on down and then bounce off of it, and I believe maybe move a little bit higher. This is also going to be dependent on the non-farm payroll announcement tomorrow morning. So definitely keep all of these factors in mind. The market should, by the way, move sideways over the next 12 hours. If you have a good counter trend strategy, you could look to sell and then look to buy and then look to sell again and then look to buy again and do this back and forth several times as the market moves sideways. And at that point you could potentially make a lot of money. So we may not get a break of this price due to that, or we could get a break of it when the news is actually released. But it's something to definitely keep an eye on. Well, that about does it for today. Until next time, this is Jason Fielder. Good trading.